This is Sarah Caroline Fugit with my Learning Theories and Practical Application iMovie for the Educational Psychology Final Exam Project. So I'm just going to get started. Perfect. This class, we went through a bunch of things that are going to help me in my career, but one of the things that I think that will really help me later in my life in my teaching career are the Gardner's multiple intelligences. The multiple intelligences are the ways that Gardner found that people learn, and there are several of them that I didn't know. They are naturalistic, impersonal, musical linguistic, intrapersonal, verbal linguistic, logical mathematic, kinesthetic, and visual spatial. So we're going to go a little bit in depth and take a look at each of these types. And so the first one was the naturalistic. And naturalistic or natural learning theory, they are very into nature and really like to recognize patterns and classify data and create a living system for what they're trying to learn. And so they write about nature and daily life, and they're very into the nature. So some practical career options would be like farmers, a naturalist, an oceanographer, or a veterinarian, because they're very into the whole naturistic aspects. The next one that I talked about was the interpersonal, and the interpersonal people are social beings, and so they're very much love to work out problems and talk with large groups on projects so they can get things done and be able to learn well in a group with others. Some good jobs for them would be probably teachers in philosophy or sales. And so interpersonal is really interacting with other people, and they learn well in groups. The next one was intrapersonal, and intrapersonal intelligences are very about being connected to who you are and how you're feeling and knowing your limits and abilities. And so they're very much about setting goals. They are very much like philosophers or psychologists. They study alone usually and set goals, and they're very determined in getting things done. The next one that we talked about was the logical mathematical, and these people are very like puzzles and formulas and very concrete and like to understand step by step why. And so some of these people might like to learn by asking questions and finding solutions. And some of them would be good detectives or bookkeepers or accountants or scientists or mathematicians, because it is logical and mathematical. So they like to be very on top of things. Another one is the verbal linguistics. And they are people, they really like to use words and to explain subjects and ask questions and enjoy telling stories, and they like to talk as well. They like to use words effectively for reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and they engage in lots of questions and answer things. So they like to think about it really with a logical sense, but they also like to speak it out and figure it out in that way. The other one that we talked about was the visual spatial learning. And visual spatial learners generally think in pictures rather than words. And so they learn best with organization and writing things out and like pictures and being able to see things. And so they solve things and like by doing crafts or using colors, and so they can visualize what they say. I think that this is going to help me as a future educator because I'll be able to use all of these multiple intelligences in ways that I will teach lessons so that all of my students will be able to learn what I'm teaching them, not only certain students, but all students. And so I will try to do my best to incorporate all types of learning into my lessons and have like the bodily kinesthetic students that they are very up and down and jumping around and they need to be moving. And so I'll try to incorporate like hand motions to memorize things, or the logical people like creating a problem and they have to figure it out by using certain steps. Or the visual spatial learners, I'll use different colors while I'm doing my anchor charts. It's very able that I feel like you can do it well, but it might just take a little bit more time and effort to be able to do this in your classroom. And I think that this is very much a place that I feel like I should spend a lot of my time doing, because I don't want only some students to be able to succeed, but I also want to teach all of my students. And I also think that being able to understand my students and their multiple intelligences on a deeper level, which would be really great, because I really do want to connect my students. And I think that multiple intelligences is just another way of me getting to know a little more about my students and what they're going through or how they think things through. And so I'll be able to help them learn. After going through these, they really did change my existing theory on how people learn, because I knew that there were different ways, but I didn't know that they were so set in stone of what and how. The ways that people learn in the multiple intelligences. And so I thought that was really neat. I also saw how multiple intelligences interacted with all of the theories that we talked about this semester. For example, multiple intelligence reflect Erickson's theory, because he talked about the different stages in life that people go through. I think that most people would find their multiple intelligence or how they learn best in the fourth stage of Erickson's theory, which is the industry versus inferiority stage, which is also when you're around 5 to 12 years old. This is when you're usually in elementary and middle school, and so I believe that this is when people learn how they learn, and that's a big part of doing school, is learning how you learn. And so I think in this stage of life, kids are trying to figure out how they learn best and what the process is that they go through, which is their multiple intelligences. And I think this is why I think multiple intelligences will be very prominent in my career, because my career will do with students in this stage of life, and I can help them find their multiple intelligences and help them figure out how they learn best, and also figure out how to continue to learn with their multiple intelligences, even when they don't have me as a teacher the following years. I also saw how Kohlberg's theory fits in with multiple intelligences. I think that my students would be in the first part, but part 2 of his first part. And I think that this is because students are trying to figure out their way of learning, and they are trying to figure out which one or learning style fits them best. And like Kohlberg is kind of talking about, he's more talking about moral understanding, but I can see that if my students in this stage are also finding their morals, that they're also finding their learning style and what works best and right for them. And some might work for them and some might not work for them, which is kind of like morals as well, because some students may have different morals than other students. And I think that's really important to showcase the differences of learning and showcase that differences are a good thing, because without all of these different learning styles or learning people and like morals and stuff, we wouldn't have the doctors, and we wouldn't have the teachers, and we wouldn't have the police officers, and we wouldn't have the chefs. And I think that's really neat how I can teach my children just like you learn differently. Like, some people may think differently than you, and that's okay. I also really think that this very much fits in with the brain, because your brain is your multiple intelligence, because your brain is what is doing the thinking and learning for you. And so, for example, if you're more left-brained, you're most likely to be logical and spatial, but if you're more right-brained, you're more likely to be visual spatial. I'm sorry, I think I said that they are supposed to be spatial for left brain, but that's more of the mathematical logistics rather than the visual spatial, because the mathematics is very figure out a plan and do these steps, while the right brain and visual spatial is colors and organization and liking things to pictures. The brain obviously affects more than just your multiple intelligence, but it does play a large role of who you are and how you learn and what type of person you will be when you grow up. And so I think it's really important to teach kids that, yes, our brains are different. God created our brains differently, differences are a huge thing, and I think that's very important. Kind of like I talked about before, it is important to talk about differences in my classroom. Another thing that will determine what type of person my students will be one day is how they're raised, which involves parenting and culture. Parenting and culture affect everyone, and I think can affect what kind of multiple intelligence you have. I say this because I think that if your culture or how you're raised is very musically, or you have music playing at night, or your parents are musical, you might do better with the musical linguistic type of learning. But if your parents and culture are very authoritative, you might be more of a linguistic or visual spatial learner, because you like to have everything organized, but you still like to have those feelings with others, which was also inter and intrapersonal. And so they still connect with people, but on different levels. So I think that also shows what kind of parenting and culture you are. I'm not 100% sure that I do see how poverty and multiple intelligences fit together, but I think that in the classroom, if we help students see their worth and that differences are good and their multiple intelligences are good and the differences, I think that will help students not only go through school well and be able to learn well, but that'll also help them later in life, because they will know that, oh, this is my multiple intelligence, maybe I should go into this profession. And I think that that they will become great working citizens that will love their job and won't want to quit their jobs. And so hopefully that will lower the poverty of our world. And if we teach them, oh, this is what I could be good at, and they love it, and it makes sense to them, that hopefully we won't have as much poverty. I do think that I see my job using multiple intelligences. I can help my students see their worth and that they can do anything. And that's also by raising their self-efficacy. This will also spark the generational me in my students, because they want to learn about them, and they're all about me. And so I think that learning about them and how they think and how they learn, that's incorporating the generation me is all about, and what it's all about them. And I think if I teach them about themselves and their multiple intelligences, they'll be able to set their goals and develop their goals and raise their self-efficacy. And this will show that they will be able to do everything that they work out. So overall, I think that my multiple intelligences fit in very well with everything else that we've been learning this semester, including the the Erickson's, the culture, the Kohlberg, the brain research, the parenting and poverty and Generation Me. I think that my students will see that they are important to this world and that they will be able to learn about themselves more and also others around them.